This video is on the process of multiplying decimals by 10, 100, and 1,000. This process would also work for larger numbers as well, 10,000, 100,000, and up from there. You would just follow the same process as the steps that I'm going to walk you through. Now, there is a little bit of prior knowledge that you would need to have for this topic, and I'll be talking about that as we go through. So let me show you exactly what we're going to be looking at today. So this is broken up into two pieces. The first thing is we're going to be talking about multiplying. We have a decimal and we're going to be multiplying it by 10. Now, the process that you need to remember here is that when you multiply, move the decimal point to the right, okay? When we multiply by a whole number, we need the product to increase in value. So the way to do that is moving the decimal point to the right, almost as if we are expanding the number. And the number of zeros on the number you're multiplying it by tells you how many times to move the decimal point. So if we're multiplying 75 hundredths times 10, we would move this decimal point one space to the right, and that would result in a value of 7 5/10. If we were to multiply 75 hundredths times 100, we are still multiplying, so our decimal point needs to move to the right, but we're multiplying by 100, which does have two zeros, which tells us that we are moving our decimal point two spaces to the right. So if I move this two spaces to the right, it now results in a product of 75. And that's 75 wholes. And then lastly, if we multiply 75 hundredths times 1,000, we are multiplying, so we move our decimal point to the right. And 1,000 has three zeros, so that does tell me that I need to move that decimal point three spaces to the right. Now, when I take this decimal point and I move it 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, you can see that this decimal point is going to kind of be floating out to the side. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This places it 3 spaces to the right. So we need to fill in our empty space with 0, as it does not have that value, and that can be that space holder. So the product results in 750. So we can see the pattern here. Every time we increase the number of zeros on the number we're multiplying by, we move our decimal point one more space to the right. So it was between the 7 and 5, came after the 5, and then it moved one space farther to the right, where we did have to add a 0 in as a placeholder. Now, the other piece to this lesson is if the, so let's say we are multiplying the number 26 times 1/10. Okay, so instead of having the whole number being the 10, 100, or 1,000, we're now going to kind of take it to the other end of the spectrum and have it be the decimal point. Now, the other piece that I have here says when you divide, move the decimal point to the left. Now, even though this says multiply by 1/10, this is where that prior knowledge is going to need to come in, and we need to realize that what we're actually doing is a division problem. Our answer is going to result in a smaller product. So here's the prior knowledge you're going to need of working with division of fractions. The process that we discuss with our students is the leave me, change me, flip me process, where you leave the first number alone, you would adjust the division symbol to a multiplication symbol, and you found the reciprocal of the second number. That's with dividing fractions. Well, we can actually apply the same process here to turn this into a division problem, a problem that we are familiar with solving. So we can use that leave me, change me, and flip me process. Now, currently, 1/10 is a decimal, and we don't have it in a fraction form to flip it. But what we need to realize is 1/10 could also be written in this manner. So if we found that reciprocal, if we flipped it, what we're realizing is multiplying by 1/10 is the same thing as dividing by 10. So that's where this rule can come in about when you divide, the decimal point now moves to the left. We're now going the opposite direction because we are dividing by a whole number. Our value does need to decrease. Now, in a whole number, your decimal point goes after it, immediately following. This still has a value of 26. So if we are dividing by 10, now the decimal moves to the left and still one space because 10 has 1 0. So our decimal now comes between the 2 and the 6 to result in a quotient of 2 6/10. Or if we wanted to apply it up here, we would say 26 times 1/10 equals 2 6/10. Both of these problems result in the same value. They are basically doing the same process. And then I'm going to do it as well, but this time with multiplying times 100th. Now we can again turn this into that division problem using the division fractions process. So 26 will remain 26. Our multiplication symbol will convert into a division symbol. And realizing that 100th could be written as a fraction like this, if I found its reciprocal, it's 100 over 1, which is just 100. So multiplying by 100th is the same process as dividing by 100. So we are back to realizing that when we divide, our decimal is moving to the left. And since 100 has 2 zeros, we move that decimal 2 spaces to the left. So we need to place our decimal at the end since it is a whole number. And we're going to move it 2 spaces to the left, which now places the decimal point in front of the number. So 26 divided by 100 is 26 hundredths, or we could say 26 times 100th equals 26 hundredths. And the same process could be used if you were to multiply by 1,000th. You would divide and move the decimal 3 spaces to the left. And if you are doing this with a number that already has a decimal in it, let's say you were doing, this was 2 6/10 times 1/10. It would still be the same process of moving the decimal 1 space to the left, since 1/10 would result in dividing by 10. So it won't always be the case where you have to add the decimal point. It would still be the same process if your number already has one.